Love and longing. Blades meet together and ring out like bells within the forest. She holds an apuk war blade with ease, the thick sword with hooked sides easily dwarfing her arms and yet still dancing in her hands. He, on the other hand, seems to have a mostly ornamental blade. It's certainly dangerous, but it looks like it would shatter upon the first parry. It had not, and as such she was now contending with a sliver of metal that flickered to and fro like the tongue of a serpent and would tap her on the arms and sleeves. You do know that fighting like this would not work in an actual battle. Miro Noir chides Vernon and he smiles in return. Yes, but you've refused to use those techniques for some reason. He replies with a wink to show he damn well knows why. A mild dusting of pink chases across her face as she considers the tactic of simply overwhelming him. It's the problem with finesse combatants. All you need to do is bowl them over and you have the advantage. Of course, racing into her husband's arms to knock him over all but guarantees that neither of them are getting up for anywhere between a few minutes to a fair portion of a day. You know very well why I won't. There's a time for work and a time for play, and we must hone our skills. Therefore, it is time to work. She chides him, and he smiles before suddenly bursting into a mass of petals and leaves. She whirls to face him, but finds nothing. The flat of his sword taps her on the cheek from behind. He hadn't teleported at all. How cheeky. "Is that how we're doing this?" she asks, and his impudent smile sends her heart aflutter. It's all for her, and she knows it. "Very well then, remember that you started it." "I welcome it," Vernon replies, and with a crack of snapping cloth she blurs until she's behind him and holding the flat of her war sword across his belly. He looks back to kiss her on the cheek, and she at once wants to growl in frustration that he wants to flirt over train and also wants to sigh as the flirting is effective. The absolute certainty of his love for her makes the whole of the universe shine so much brighter, the air so much sweeter, and even the most incidental of noises are nearly music in her ears. His warm and welcoming form dissolves into petals and leaves again, and he's standing some 10 paces away. His left hand is on his thigh, and he's thinned his profile to her with the sword extended at maximum length. The stance looks effective, but the smile is unchanged. He's still playing with her. Then she raises an eyebrow and can't help her own smile as she twists the axiom around them. The forest and world around them grows utterly still. She strolls up to him and chuckles. It had taken a bit of work to work out how he'd done it in the first round, but it was worth it. She casually brings up her sword and taps him on the cheek with the flat, only to run into his sword now in a defensive position. She blinks and he's suddenly offering her a flower with his sword holding hers away. He's frozen with a wink on his face. But he is frozen. She raises an eyebrow in response before breaking into giggles and allowing the construct to fade as she takes the flower from his hand and gives it an appreciative sniff. "Is there an off button?" she asks, and he moves into a considering pose. No, there isn't," he says before smiling wider. "Not when I'm wed to so wonderful a woman. When we're done training, save it for then. We need to keep our skills sharp. It's only proper." Miro Noir protests a little before mentally face-palming, a human gesture of annoyance or frustration. There's an easy way out of this, and she overlooked it the whole time. He has a hard time reading people, so of course it's all playfulness. He can't really see her frustration. "Please, for me, it means a lot to me." The reaction is instant as he blinks and seems to stiffen up before nodding. "Right? Sorry." He takes 2 steps away while gripping his sword harder, then turning in a snap. He's back in the thin profile pose but is balanced on it. The smile is now a resolute grin, and he's watching her with an intensity that stirs her own wants deep down. She likes his serious face. "On your mark." She nods and takes a defensive stance. There's something in his gaze that tells her she'll need it. "Mark!" He's on her the instant the word leaves her mouth. She manages to catch the flicker of light that his blade is reduced to at these speeds, and for a moment she can make out the sword. His eyes flicker and she follows the pattern as his sword follows it. He's not used to melee combat in the way she is. His eyes are telling her everything. Without needing to look, she parries 4 times before there's a whisper, quiet but undeniable surge of axiom, and his sword slices right through hers. She weaves away, and as he brings his sword to rest at her chin, she has the edge of hers at his stomach. They both freeze and he glances down in shock. She got him good. This one would have been a mutual, even with his blade breaking hers. Impressive. Thank you, she purrs in response. He tosses his sword up into the canopy handle first, and it's caught by the forest itself. He picks up the pieces of her sword and they start glowing before they snap onto the rest of her blade, and it all merges back together seamlessly. Care to go again? He asks, and his sword drops down from above and into his hand. I'd love to. She replies and he nods. This time, his stance is more as if at attention, and the sword is held somewhat to the side with a flourish. A basic trick to make people look at the weapon and not the one who holds it. Very well then, begin, Vernon exclaims, and she bursts forward blade first. As expected, he melts away, then she grabs him by the tip of her tail using axiom for the grip, stomping on the ground to anchor herself, and then throws him hard. He bursts into petals and leaves once more time, and she turns with a slight smile as he's now behind her and applauding politely. Teach me to forget about such things. Good throw. A puck are dangerous from the back and the front. There might not be a great club or blade on our tail, but it's still part of us, and with the war arts, it's all you need. She preens. Care to go again? Love to, he says before twirling the sword and then taking on the more proper fighting stance again. Before we begin, why do you insist on those, what was it called again, a rapier? Oh, mostly because rapiers are more a finesse weapon, designed to be used quickly and precisely, and that's kind of my thing with axiom too. Tight control, and anything you see is because I want you to. If I can get to that kind of level with a rapier, then it works, he says. But she raises an eyebrow. There's more to it, and she knows it. And rapiers are considered a sort of dashing gentleman-style sword. The thing you get from a man pining for his princess if he isn't some knight in shining armor. Vernon explains, and she can't help but giggle. You need to stop being adorable, Vernon. This is training time, not flirting time. She then charges him and leads with a diagonal swing that he dodges but doesn't properly counter. She's not sure how to fight with such a light, thin weapon, but he's clearly not taking advantage of it. He really is right out of the old stories, amazing with axiom but little skill in melee combat. More excuses for more duels in the future. She takes another swing at him and there's a flicker in his eyes. He almost goes to do something, then backs off. Why? She melts backwards and goes still. What? You were about to do something, then stopped. Why? She asks, and he looks ashamed. It's a dirty trick. We're sword fighting. Using something other than the sword isn't allowed in human duels, he says, and she lets out a little ah of understanding. He's following a different dueling tradition. First blood or disarm or something else. A puck duel until surrender or unconsciousness. Restorative axiom techniques mean that we can push much further and much harder than a race bound to cruel space. She reminds him and he looks conflicted. What's wrong? I really don't want to hurt you. I really don't want to hurt you, he says, and she can see something behind his eyes. The forest shivers around them through his connection to it. Why would he? Wait. How active is your imagination? Too active sometimes. Far too active, he whispers with a pained look. Vernon, I wasn't simply acting as a tourist when I wandered after earning my title. I went from world to world, plying a trade of violence and sheer strength. When I moved to Centris, It was a mere 6 months before we met. I have bested armies worth of skilled prize fighters. In many places it was to the point that there was simply nothing to be gained in betting on whether I would win or not, but rather on how swiftly I would. She explains, and he still looks hesitant. Oh, Vernon. She kisses him gently. I'll be fine. Show me all the strength you can bring. Show me how my beloved fights. It's just difficult to get over. I may backslide, Vernon admits as they step apart and he brings up his sword again. Then I'll remind you as many times as I must, she says before bringing her own sword up. Now show me the strength of cruel space. There's a screeching protest of metal on metal as he charges in with a brutal stab. She deflects it, but he runs the blade up, and then she has to jerk her head backwards to avoid a punch from the basket hilt that is then turned into a slam that she has to completely disengage from him to avoid. He's on her again, and right in her face and space. Her sword is too large to use, but so's his, which is why he's using it as a punching gauntlet. The sword fight devolves into wrestling as they both try to wrench each other's weapon out of the other's hands and get the advantage. The blades go flying and she launches him away. He lands on all fours and rises to take a stance with his arms in front of him, ready to both attack and defend. Feeling a heat that has nothing to do with physical exertion building inside her, Miro Noir starts pacing with her hands in claw-like formations and her tail slowly waving from side to side. They begin circling the area, daring one another to attack. Miro Noir rushes in first with her fingernails trailing red sparks. Too little fire for the forest to react to, but enough for Vernon to know that if this wasn't a friendly match, they'd scythe through ship plating with ease. Her first swing is a feint that she uses to bring her tail around and slam into Vernon's thigh as he moves to start grappling with her. He's knocked to the ground and rolls with it, but she's on him so quickly he's forced on the defense that she steps into and then forces him to dodge an attack with her horns that strips him of steady footing. She grabs him by the shirt and shakes him fully off balance while holding him off the ground. Now that's more like it. She purrs and kisses him on the lips. He then starts lifting into the air as he starts flying ever so slightly to deepen the kiss. Think we've pushed enough? Vernon asks, what he wants dripping from his voice. We can have another session later today, right now. Right now, we're a little too distracted, don't you think? Miro Noir purrs as lifts her from under her rump and carries her to a nearby tree and starts kissing her deeply while pinning her to the bark. We're not going to get anything done today. Do you want me to stop? Vernon asks, pulling away a little. Her answer is to pull him right back in.